As a weekend, as a race, what were the main headlines for you, and how was it commentating the Indy 500 this year?
Yeah, I think, the Indy 500, it's special. It's a bit like the Super Bowl. It's not just one day. It's the whole month of May and that build up. It's a crescendo into the pomp and ceremony before the race. 325,000 people crammed into the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and just that build up. So many unknowns around what happens in practice to qualifying weekend, where they turn the boost up. Then, of course, the boost comes back down for carb day. The weather was really inclement for carb day this year, so we didn't really know what the mileage was going to be like in terms of fuel mileage for the Honda versus Chevrolet battle. We knew that Chip Ganassi were going to be really strong because of their practice pace. Ed Carpenter always brings a really strong car for qualifying. Could they convert that into the race? Question marks around Arrow McLaren SP. Can they convert their qualifying pace? Because don't forget, they were really strong in qualifying at Texas earlier on in the year and then faded in the race. Would the likes of Andretti and Team Penske come through? And so with all of that in mind, and then just the gravitas of the occasion, my first time leading for the Indy 500, Sky Sports F1, and to have two wonderful guests in Max Chilton and Andy Vanderberg, it was a magical experience, a magical month, a magical build-up, and the race didn't disappoint. There was everything that you'd expect from an Indy 500. You had the big crashes. It's obviously a dangerous affair, doing 230 miles an hour for 200 laps with 33 cars on track, and a little twist at the end, a few banana skins. I used the term snakes and ladders in terms of the strategy and banana skins that come the way of certain drivers. Look at Palou and Scott Dixon, so close but yet so far.
Absolutely.
And Ericsson didn't melt at the end. I thought he was going to be under huge pressure with Pato trying to go around the outside into turn one, and no one had really made it too wide there at racing speeds. We saw obviously the second lane in turn one during the restarts, but certainly not with the tyre life the way it was. Don't forget, at the end of the race there, those Firestone tyres were absolutely shot, and all of the accidents happened towards the end of the stint life on those tyres. So not up to race temperature, no rubber left. I think Pato O'Ward definitely made the right choice in terms of backing out, because that was only ever going one way. I think TK and Felix Rosenquist were licking their lips in third and fourth, because the Indy 500 was almost coming their way if those two had gone through turn one side by side. So I don't think Ericsson was going to lift, and I think they would have both ended up in the fence, if I'm honest.
If we start from the start, it's crazy to look back on now. Scott Dixon on pole, leading them around that lap, and the way his race eventually unfolded. What was it like in the booth, kind of looking over the start of the race, and for viewers watching it for the first time, what's the start of an Indy 500 like?
I think with 325,000 people in the grandstands and the atmosphere and the snake pit and the sweltering temperatures and the sunshine, it looked fabulous, didn't it? And the pomp and the ceremony and the way that the Americans push these races off, whether or not it's the Super Bowl or it's the Indy 500 or whatever it is, it's really special. And if that doesn't make the hair on the back of your neck stand up, you're watching the wrong thing. And so that was fairly magical. It was nice to see Scott have a playmate. So he had Alex Palou up there. He's not had that in years gone by. And we've sort of always talked about how difficult it is to win a 500 by yourself. And he's had to work with other people and do various different things. But he had Palou there, and he could share he didn't have to push the air at the front. He could sort of help his fuel mileage with swapping the two cars, and it looked really good up until that catastrophe with I think it was Rinus VeeKay, wasn't it, the first crash, and just how unlucky that was for Alex Palou. And it nearly happened to Scott later on in the race where, he was running out of fuel, and luckily they opened the pits just in time. And that was the challenge for Palou, is they just didn't have they didn't have the fuel to get round another lap. It was only another lap or two that they needed before they opened the pit lane, and he just didn't have it. And so once Palou disappeared, we'd lost two of the big hitters in the first sort of 20% of the race. So it was always then going to be really interesting to see what happened. And TK looked really aggressive, but just couldn't quite push his way to the front with the way things went, and cautions and pit stops. And Ericsson just looked cool, calm, and collected. We didn't see much of Ericsson, and that's the greatest thing about the 500 is, if you can just stay out of trouble, find your rhythm, do your thing, you beat 30% of the field, as they say. So Ericsson looked really pretty, and Pato looked aggressive. We were talking in the studio about who was going to be able to take it to Scott Dixon. Now Scott had lost his playmate, and it looked like Pato was the one, because TK couldn't get to the front. He was the other car that looked super aggressive, and sort of Felix Rosenqvist, the two Swedes, were very cool, calm, and collected, just biding their time, doing their thing, and it almost worked for them, because there was a time later on in the race where it was Rosenqvist and Ericsson at the front, and that sort of strategy almost worked for them. It certainly worked for Ericsson. So that's for me, my memory of the race, and just marveling over, after such a strong start, how Will Power struggled, how he went backwards, how he then had that difficult pit stop. It really fell away for Penske. Newgarden couldn't get forward. Then it was Scott McLaughlin who was leading the charge. He had the biggest hit of the month in turn 3 and turn 4, so that fell away. And a lot of the title contenders, they just weren't there, and it's turned with the double points, it's turned the championship on its head going into Detroit this weekend. But yeah, lots of stories. I was sad for Palou, for VK. They're really quick, and the one person I've not mentioned there, and the one person who got the biggest cheer, the Indiana native Connor Daly, who's been such a character throughout the week. And we saw the VT from NBC about the pranks and his hot tub and various different things. He had a really difficult qualifying. The ECR car wasn't where he wanted it to be compared to his teammates, but he found his way to the front with a great bit of strategy and a bit of luck, pitting before that yellow, and he looked good. Once he found his way to the front, he looked really good. He didn't have the armory that, say, Pato had, or maybe TK, but he could stay there, and no one could pass him, and he was running the same sort of laps as everyone else. So I was pleased to see it work out for Connor, because he's a really good kid, and he does take it seriously, but he does enjoy himself at the same time. He's almost got that Danny Rick style, where he can just go from enjoying himself to the consummate professional. But he's super intelligent, Connor, when he's on track, and he's also very polished. Out of all the drivers, if I message the drivers, Connor's the first to get back to you. So he sees the value in being professional, and he might play the fool, but he's very astute, and he knows that if he plays the media, if he's attentive, if he's communicating, if he's doing all of the things off the track that he's doing on the track, he's going to have a successful career, and he does that really well. So I've got a lot of time for Connor personally. So I was pleased to see him up there leading the 500 at one stage.